Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello, my name is Dr. Himanshu Tyagi and I am teaching this course on heat and mass transfer. Today will be lecture number 9. It's a new topic that we are starting today. So, we are looking at transient conduction part 1. Let us do a brief recap of what we did in lecture number 8, which was the last part of the steady state conduction. So, we looked into detail about the Finn equation and we solved with the help of energy balance equation over here. And what we found out was that we can just make use of this conduction and convection terms and try and figure out what is the value of T as a function of x. So, what we wanted to do was find out the temperature distribution. In order to do that, we have to solve this differential equation over here, and then we needed two boundary conditions. So, we made the assumption for case 1 that the fin is infinitely long. So, once we consider this, we know the temperatures at both the condition at x equals to 0 as well as x equals to L. After that, we proceeded to solve for both the temperature distribution, which we obtained here on the lower left side, as well as total heat loss from the fin, which we obtained on the lower right hand side. So, these are two very important parameters for any given fin. We calculated two more parameters after that. The third one was fin efficiency, and this is something that we did based on this particular ratio, and for this particular special case it turned out to be a very simple expression highlighted in this yellow zone over here. We proceeded to figure out the value of fin effectiveness as well, because that is an important parameter which tells us how much improvement is there in heat loss compared to the no fin condition. And then after completing this case 1, we finished off with case number 2, which was the adiabatic tip condition. And I would request the students to make a small correction. As I had pointed out last time, I was guessing that there is a hyperbolic tan h was missing over here. So, let us go ahead and write this as tan h. So, I have corrected it over here. So, there was a small typo. So, it would be hyperbolic tan ml divided by ml. So, let us put a bracket over here as well. So, with that we have finished the steady state part, and now we will move to a very interesting topic, and this is very interesting because in most real life situations the heat transfer generally takes place under transient condition. Even if it is steady for long time, in order to heat it up initially and then cool it down towards the end, those are some transients which are observed. And from mechanical point of view, mechanical properties point of view, most of the failure of material actually takes place because of the transient fatigue. So, let us go ahead and try and see with very simple cases that what exactly is transient heat transfer and how do we solve it. So, we will again take the help of the 1D plane geometry, plane wall geometry, and over here I will present two cases. I will call them case A on the left hand side and then case B on the right hand side, and both case A as well as case B will be transient analysis cases with a small difference between them. So, both are walls which were initially throughout at 20 degrees over here. So, the left side temperature is 20 degree over here on this wall A, the right side temperature is also 20 degrees, and then the same thing is happening in wall B, but there is one fundamental difference between these two cases, and we will look into that. That will tell us about the importance of studying transient analysis. So, let us say initially we have a wall which is throughout very cold. So, from our summer standards we say that throughout the wall is 20 degrees on both sides and throughout the whole material is 20 degree. So, everywhere it is 20 degree. Then what we are going to do is, on the right hand side we are going to heat it with hot air, and simultaneously we will heat it on the hot air on the left hand side as well. So let's proceed to do that. So we pass some hot air on the left side as well as the hot air on the right hand side of this particular wall, and we do it until the whole wall reaches a new temperature of 40 degrees. So over here what objective is to figure out how would heat transfer look as a function of time over here. So this is our final condition. So as we can guess, what would happen is the heat is going to come from the sides of the two wall and it's going to penetrate towards the middle. And as it happens over time, maybe 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 50 seconds, the temperature of the wall would start to increase. How would it increase? Let us see graphically over here. So if this is the mid section of the wall, so one thing we can see is, because all conditions are symmetric, it's going to happen symmetrically on both sides. So the temperature has risen like this. After some time, the temperature would further increase and it will reach something like this. And after some more time, the temperature would increase like this. Then it will go like this, and eventually it will attain this blue line which is already existing over there. So what we can do now is show the process of time over here. So this red arrow actually indicates that time increases in this particular direction. So this is a very good example of transient conduction, in which we can see the temperature profile is changing with time. Initial time condition is not taken as t equals to 0, and after some finite amount of time, the whole wall reaches 40 degrees. So this is we have completed the analysis for case A. Now let us try and see if we have a different type of wall, what might happen on case B. Case B also wall we are heating, so eventually its temperature will increase and it will go to the same temperature over here, 40 degree over here and 40 degree over here. But let us see how does this is special wall case B, the temperature here changes this way. So these temperature profiles are at different time. So time is increasing accordingly over here, and I will draw the red arrow again to indicate the increase of time over here. So if I stop over here and pause and ask a question to the students, what do you think, what are the circumstances which are leading to this difference between case A and case B? It's a very interesting question, and if we think about it, what is so special about case B? So wall B seems to have a unique characteristic that we can define as that the temperature is always uniform. Temperature is changing with time, of course, but at any given time in the spatial domain, the temperature is not a function of x or y or z. So this is a very special case, and there are certain conditions under which we can assume that the whole body has a uniform temperature. So let's go ahead and write that term down over here. So the whole body has uniform temperature. And why am I beginning this lecture with this type of a comparison over here? It is just to illustrate one particular point, that if we have to achieve some difficult target, if we have to learn some difficult topic, it's always better to divide it into small parts and then first study the easiest part. Then, just like if you have to take a big step, if we can take small steps. So in order to introduce transient analysis, it is best that we look at it in the simplest case, and the simplest case is the where a body has uniform temperature throughout, and technically we will say that the whole body we can lump together. So it is called as the lumped analysis. So now with this particular background, let us go and formally define that what exactly is a lumped system. So lumped system is a system in which throughout the temperature remains uniform. It can only change with time. So mathematically, if I have to write what I just said in words, I would represent it like this. So what it shows over here, that the general function t x comma t, in fact I can even make it like this, t x y z comma t is not depending either on x or on y or on z, it is simply a function of t. If any of these conditions hold true, then we can say it is a lumped system. In words, what we are saying is that the whole body is always at a uniform temperature. So, let us take one simple example which will help us illustrate this particular point, and we will do the example first and then analyze it later. So, this, if you remember, is the same example that we took right at the beginning of the course in lecture number 1, where I was introducing the concept of convection. So, let us say we have a fluid which is at a cold temperature, and I want to drop some hot metal ball inside this particular fluid. So, this is my metal ball over here, and let me assume it to be very good conductor. So, I am assuming that this is a copper ball. I am assuming I know everything about this ball, which means I know its radius. So, for simplicity I am taking it at 1 centimeter. From the thermal properties table, I can figure out thermal conductivity of copper is approximately 400 watts per meter Kelvin. I also know its density. Density for copper, if I remember correctly, is about 900 kgs per meter cube. Now, I can also figure out its, because I know the dimension of this particular ball. So, I can also write its, by the way, I can also write its specific heat. It is about 400 joules per kg Kelvin. Because I know its diameter, I can figure out its surface area as well as mass, because mass is simply density times volume. So, I know the volume as well. All these properties I know. So, what is the unknown over here? What I am, two more properties let me write, and then I will answer that question. This ball is very hot initially. So, the initial temperature Ti I am keeping as 80 degrees. And the fluid over here is actually relatively cold. So, this fluid temperature always remains at 20 degrees centigrade. So, maybe there is some cooling mechanism attached to the fluid, or maybe the ball mass is very less compared to the big mass of the fluid. It could be a big swimming pool or a very big water tank having 500 or 1000 liters capacity. And one more thing I know is, as soon as that the copper ball is dropped over here, it cools down due to convection with a convective heat transfer coefficient of 100 watts per meter Kelvin. So, if you remember in the first day of the class, when I drew its temperature function as a function of time. So, what I am drawing over here is temperature of copper ball. Initially, its temperature will be Ti. At T equals to 0, I know the temperature value Ti equals to 80 degrees, and I know the value of the surrounding fluid, which is the oil or some water or some other fluid over here. So, that temperature is 20 degrees. I know that temperature as well. So, what we will figure out very soon when we are doing the calculation for this particular chapter is that if we do the analysis, we will figure out that there is some sort of a exponential decay function which takes place over here, and the temperature of the ball drops very rapidly initially, and then the slope becomes more and more gradual, something like this. And after very long amount of time, its temperature will reach that of the oil. Right. Now, what happens if I want to cool this ball much faster? So, in other words, I will put it quantitative number over here. Let us say this is this curve which I have drawn over here is essentially temperature as a function of time. So, if I say that in 100 seconds it reaches very close to 20 degrees, I am not satisfied with that. I want this thing to happen in 50 seconds. So, let me make the half point over here. I want the same curve to be achieved in 50 seconds. The temperature should drop drastically like this. 50 seconds it will come over here, then it is going like this. On the other hand, somebody says I want to do the reverse, let it not cool so fast, let it cool little bit slow. So, it may go something like this. Or it could be the worst case scenario, somebody wants to control it in such a way that he wants it to take the longest time to cool. For instance, if instead of this being a copper ball, this is my afternoon lunch which I brought from home, it is surrounded in the air. If it is not insulated in a good canteen, I am just carrying it in my hand. So that hot food that I am having, some chapati, some rice, some dal, its temperature will keep on reducing. But if I want to insulate it, I don't want to have a decrease in temperature, then what I have in mind is something like this green curve that I have just drawn over here. I want the food to retain its temperature for a very long time, or if even if the temperature drop is there, I want it to be very, very low. So what we will analyze in this particular chapter is that we will see the direction in which these curves are actually moving. So we will try and figure out, is there some parameter which is actually governing how fast this particular thing cools down, and is it just one parameter, is it just H, the heat transfer coefficient, which I can change around, or are there other parameters as well. So I will put a question mark over here. What are all the parameters? Because qualitatively things we can figure out relatively easily, but we have to be exactly precise. Then we need to do some mathematics in order to figure out the exact number. So let us go ahead and do that exercise. So for what we want over here is the governing equation for, so I will write over here, what I want is the full governing equation whose solution will give me temperature as a function of time. And all this analysis that I am doing today is only for lumped system. So I am going to highlight it once more over here, that whatever I am doing today is just for lumped system, because that is the easiest thing to do. If you go back to over the left side over here, case A may occur many times, because we cannot make the lumped analysis unless certain criteria is fulfilled. So we will look at that in those conditions the solution becomes very complicated. So how we will solve it? Will we use numerical method? Will we use separation of variable? Those kind of things we will discuss in later classes. But for today, let us see the objective is that we want to figure out temperature as a function of time. So what equation will give me this particular thing, and whatever answer we will get, we will call that is similar to the Newton's law of cooling. So I think few centuries back Newton also did this thing, and probably he observed it experimentally. We will try to do the same thing, but analytically and using the energy balance equation. So I will draw the same copper ball once again over here, and I want to do the energy balance on this copper ball. So if you remember, till now in all the previous cases we have been doing energy balance in space. For instance, we were writing that over here q dot x is there, on this side q dot x plus delta x, and then in the case of fin, you remember we had q dot convection term. So all these things were inside this particular box having the dimension dx, and all these were on the different sides, and this is a function of distance, because we have this subscript x plus dx over here. In transient analysis we will do something similar, but here the variable will be time. So most of the things will be as a function of time, like earlier it was temperature as a function of x, but here it does not vary with x, here temperature varies with time. So energy balance, let us try and do. How can we do it with time? So let us say we have dropped this copper ball inside that cold fluid, and certain time has passed. So we are starting our analysis after time t, and we will do our analysis for a short time interval delta t. And I think I hope many of you will now realize what I am trying to do is, I will then take the limits that as delta t goes to 0, then things will turn into a differential form, something d of dt. So this is the technique that we are going to use today over here. Now how do I do energy balance in time t? Let us try and do that. So we will write the first term on the left hand side as that as soon as the time t starts over there, then in the next delta t time, how much heat is lost by the copper ball. So let me write it down in words so that it becomes clear to all the students. What is the heat lost by copper ball during the time interval delta t, right? Which means essentially I am asking a question, how much heat transfer has taken place? How much heat transfer takes place in delta t time, which means now we are not talking of the rate of time, we are actually talking of energy or the amount of heat which is taking place. If it was rate, then we would be using q dot, but here we are actually using delta q, that how much energy is actually transferred. So, if I ask this question to the students and for hint I will draw the fluid around over here. So, let me draw the light blue color fluid over here, and for hint I will tell you this fluid is having one single temperature, that is T infinity. The temperature of the copper ball at time t, because remember we are doing it at time t, we do not know that temperature, but mathematically we can define it as temperature at time t. So, in delta t time interval, how much energy or how much heat in terms of joules has been lost by this ball. So, the trick lies in the fact that we will analyze that how is this ball losing heat. So, here we are assuming that temperatures are not that high that it is losing it relatively. So, let us try and imagine that how will it lose heat through convection. So, it will turn out to be H into the surface area multiplied by its own temperature at that time with the difference with the ambient fluid, and we are taking the time interval. So, I have to multiply it with delta t over here. So, whatever this term will come out to be, the answer will be in terms of joules. So, this joule will be able to answer that this bracket. So, that bracket's answer will be given over there, that how much heat is lost by copper ball during the time interval delta t. So, this is my left hand side, and what will it be equal to? If my copper ball loses some heat, let us say 2 joules or 5 joules, some number I will put over here in a very small time interval. Let us say initially I am not taking the limit delta t goes to 0, let me take a small interval, let us say 1 second. In 1 second, if my copper ball loses certain heat, what will happen to its temperature? I think the temperature will go down. So, the next part is that how much is the decrease in energy of the copper ball during delta t time. So, I will write it over here. What is the decrease in energy of copper ball during the time interval delta t. Now, because this course deals just with thermal properties, so we will only concentrate on the internal energy. So, essentially we are trying to say that how much internal energy is actually getting lost. So, that one answer is just mCp delta t. So, over here I will write mCp delta t, and because the final amount is less than the initial amount, I will write it in this form. That if somebody asks me how much loss is there, then this answer also has to be in terms of joules. And if nature is playing everything right, then both these joules have to be equal to one another, which means if I just put an imaginary number 5 joules, so left hand side and right hand side both should turn out to be 5 joules each. Now, this is the starting point of the differential equation or the governing equation that we were looking for. Let us not forget our objective. If we forget, we have to go back to the previous slide and try and figure out what we have highlighted in yellow color over here. So, this is our objective. We want to figure out temperature as a function of time. Now, do we see some sort of a differential equation appearing over here? I can see, because I will like to take this delta t on the other side and then take some limits. So, let us go ahead and do that exercise. So, it is very easy and straightforward. So, what I am going to do is create this fraction over here, HAS divided by mCp, and this is essentially equal to or multiplied by temperature as a function of time, difference with ambient temperature. This will turn out to be temperature T, and here I am running out of space. So, I will write like this, divided by delta T. Now, I will take the limits that delta T tends to 0. Sorry, this is small t. So, small delta T tends to 0. As the time interval we are reducing, what is going to happen? This right hand side will become dt by dt, right. I hope you can see that this is the fundamentals of calculus, and over here we have to put a negative sign because we are essentially subtracting the forward time from the past time. So, minus sign will come over here. Now, one substitution I want to make, what I want to do is this particular term over here, because it is appearing very big and there is a physical significance behind it as well. Let me substitute it with the symbol B. So, I will write B equals to HAS divided by MCP. And this will have the units 1 by seconds. So, it is inverse of time and it is known as a time constant. So, it is a funny thing, even though it is the inverse of time, it is known as time constant. So, with the help of this substitution, our equation will become very neat and clean. So, in order to do that, let me go ahead and use the next slide. And over there, what I am going to do is, I will write the differential equation in the simplified form. So, what it appears as now is, it is simply dt by dt is equals to b t minus t infinity, and over here I will just to make a small note that all that functions t as a function of t, I am just abbreviating it as capital T, which means this capital T and this capital T, we are now keeping it in our memory that both are function of time. Now, it is a very simple first order ODE, we can go ahead and solve it. Let's go ahead and do that. We will perform one integral. So, what we get over here is dt divided by t minus t infinity on the left hand side, and what we get is on the right hand side we have this, right. We are just moving the variables around, and let us perform an integral on both sides. So, on the left hand side it is kind of like a logarithmic answer we will get. So, we will get natural log t minus t infinity, and on the right hand side we will get minus bt, plus there should be a constant as well, right, because there is a constant for integration over here. Now, this is the solution that we were looking for, except for one small thing that we haven't figured out what is the value of C. So, I would again like to ask the students, please recall that when we were solving the 1D heat conduction equation for a plane wall case in the last few chapters, there was always the term del square T by del x square, and we had to solve it because it was a second order equation d square T by dx square. We needed two boundary conditions, right. Over here we come and see that this was a first order equation. So, instead of having two constants C1 and C2, there is only one constant over here, which means we should have one condition in order to figure out C. Now, because these things are now dealing with time, instead of calling it a boundary condition, because boundary suggests there is a left side, right side, it is a spatial and locational parameter, let us use the new word initial. Initial suggests that there is a time which is flowing, initial, mid and then final. So, what I would write over here is, we need one initial condition is needed here, and I can abbreviate initial condition as IC. So, can someone suggest that what should be that initial condition which will help me get rid of this C, because this C is a constant, it can have any value, but for a given problem like when we are dropping our copper ball inside that particular fluid, is there a time at which I know its temperature? So, let us go back to the previous slide and try and see over here, where is it, we have defined our problem. One more slide will go, yeah, this is the problem that we are looking at. So, let us see over here. So, T1 is 80 degrees, yeah, this is going to be my initial condition. So, let me highlight it with yellow color over here. So, this is what I was looking at, that initially my system temperature I know, that is 80 degrees. So, what I will put is temperature at T equals to 0 is 80 degrees. So, let me go ahead and do that. So, I will write temperature at T equals to 0 Instead of 80 degree, I'll just put a constant Ti. That constant I can keep on changing. So I don't have to always write 80 degrees over here. So now let me go ahead and apply this initial condition over here. So if I do that, then it becomes ln Ti minus T infinity is minus B, time is 0 plus C. So we see beautifully that C automatically comes out to be ln Ti minus T infinity. Aha, now we have figured out what's the value of this constant. Now let us go ahead and plug it in over here, and finally we will be able to get our final answer. So if I do that, what will I get? I'll get ln T minus T infinity equals to minus Bt, and this C is ln Ti minus T infinity. So one way I can write it is, I can bring this thing on this particular side, and what will I get? I'll get ln, because if I subtract two logs, I have to just divide that. We remember it from our high school. What I am talking about is something like this. If I want to say log x minus log y, I can just say it is log x divided by, I am using this particular identity over here. So I go back, and this thing becomes minus Bt. So this is my final solution. This is one way I can write my final solution. There is another way. I can simply say I want to write simply temperature as a function of time. So I will make the exponential on the right hand side. So it will turn out to be T infinity plus Ti minus T infinity multiplied by this exponential minus Bt. So from a temperature point of view, this perhaps sounds to be a better solution, but both are equivalent equation. And now over here, if I highlight it with red color over here, what I am indicating at this, now we clearly see there is an exponential decay term coming over here, right? And why am I excited to see this exponential decay term? Let me go back 2 slides. Okay, here if you look at this bottom right hand side, all these curves, it seems, are actually exponential decays. So it's simply y equals to e raised power minus x. So it kind of decays exponentially. So in nature, there are so many things which decay exponentially. Like if you see transmission of light through participative media, it will decay exponentially. So when light is traveling through atmosphere, most of it gets scattered and absorbed. So during evening time, we see that the sun becomes super red. That is the one of the reasons that it is the longer, shorter wavelengths are getting scattered more. The atmosphere is longer during the evening and morning, and all that is actually exponential decay. So it's very interesting that what we are seeing over here, and we can do a quick check as well over here. Let's do the check. And what is the check we want to do? Let's put in time t equals to 0. At t equals to 0, this whole thing should become, so this first term is T infinity, second term is Ti minus T infinity, then e to the power 0 is 1, right? So we just multiplied by 1. What we get over here is, so we have confirmed that at time t equals to 0, our copper ball is initially at Ti, which numerically we remembered was 80 degree, but we don't need to remember it, just Ti is sufficient. And the other thing we can confirm is over here that all exponential curves at infinite time, what they should become. So most of them at infinite time, let's go ahead and plug those values in as well. Time t equals to infinity. So what we will get over here, first let us see mathematically, then we will try to analyze it physically as well. So mathematically, t equals to infinity means Ti minus T infinity. Now what is exponential minus infinity? So that is equal to 0, right? So the whole thing becomes 0. So final answer is, at infinite time, my ball, fluid, everything will be at T infinity. So the whole thing settles down. So the same answer is for my lunch. If I leave my lunch for infinite time, it will achieve the atmospheric temperature. Of course, I don't want to do that. It will get spoiled before that, but it's just a mathematical proof. So physically also we have seen, and mathematically also we have seen. So very interesting result we got mathematically over here. Now let us do one formal definition. Remember one thing, whatever we are doing today, it started with one simple case, and that case was, we are comparing case A and case B. So as engineers, if we like to solve the simple problems first, what we were trying to do is learn the lumped analysis, and that is what we are doing with the solving that energy balance equation. Now we have to also ask a question that we have figured out, if somebody tells us that okay, lumped analysis is true in this case, what does that mean? That temperature is uniform throughout. But can we also not ask a question that how can we ourselves figure out whether a particular case is lumped or not? So that is what we will learn in the next slide. So I will call it the criteria for knowing whether to apply lumped analysis or not. So we will put a question mark over here, that what is that particular criteria. So let me give the answer first and then I will explain it little bit later. So this is credit to two gentlemen named Biot, and this is abbreviated of that particular gentleman's name. So let me first write this equation over here, and BI stands for Biot, it is BIOT. So he was from France, BIOT, and it's called, let me write it again, it's called Biot number. So I think most of engineers are more familiar with non-dimensionalized numbers. I think everyone has already studied earlier somewhere or heard about Reynolds number, and in this course we will study so many more numbers. It will be Nusselt number, Rayleigh number, Grashof, Sherwood number, Lewis number. So these are all famous scientists and engineers in past who have non-dimensionalized some form, and this Biot has non-dimensionalized it in such a way. So if you look at the dimension of this particular term, it turns out to be there is no dimension, it is non-dimensionalized number. The main thing that we have to remember over here, so I am writing it very carefully, is that this thermal conductivity K is for the solid. So I will make that point once again. So Biot number is written on the left hand side. What is on the right hand side is the heat transfer coefficient. So if I drop my copper ball inside that particular fluid, whatever heat transfer of convection is taking place, that H value we have to plug in over here. K of the solid means the solid that we are analyzing in this particular case, that solid is copper. So we have to look at copper in this particular case. And what is LC stand for? So LC has been defined as the characteristic length. So LC is the characteristic length, and the way it has been defined is simply the volume of that particular object divided by its surface area. So remember, we took a copper ball having the radius r. So let us try and figure out over here what will its characteristic length turn out to be. Volume is 4 by 3 pi r cube. Surface area of this particular sphere is this. So a lot of cancellations will take place, and it turns out the value will be r by 3. So for a sphere, this is the case that we have looked at. For a cylinder, we can do the same exercise, volume divided by area, and it turns out over there the value will be r by 2. We can also do the same thing for a slab having thickness as 2L. So if it is a slab having thickness 2L, its characteristic length will turn out to be equal to L. Now what does the Biot number stand for? What is its physical significance? So first let me write the criteria. So an engineer can always figure out what is the Biot number of a system which is undergoing transient analysis. And if Biot number, after we have calculated it, we will do very quickly a solved example, it turns out to be less than 0.1, then we can be very sure that we can apply the lumped analysis with a certain approximation. So if the Biot number is less than 1, then lumped analysis can be applied. But there is a small underline word over there, with accuracy of up to, with plus minus 15% accuracy over here. So what it tells is essentially that a lot of people in the heat transfer community, they have come to a conclusion that for these kind of problems 15% uncertainty is actually not that bad, because in other experiments also it's very difficult to bring down the uncertainty, especially in convection conduction, to less than 15%. So, the physical significance I will explain over here very briefly is that what it actually tells is, if somebody wants to have 100% accuracy, then that case Biot number should have what value? So, the answer is, in that case Biot number only can have one value, it has to be just 0 in order to have 100% or let us say plus minus 0% accuracy. Plus minus 0% uncertainty means it is 100% accurate. Of course, this will never happen in real life, because this can only happen if the dimension is very large or the h value is very large. Or I am sorry, I am telling the other way, if the dimension is very small, h value is very small, or in other words the k of the solid is very large. And we have already seen in our first lecture that for copper, for diamond, for carbon nanotube, k of course has a limit. There is no substance known to man where the k value is infinity, because only when k value is infinity Biot can be 0. So, we have to learn as engineers to live with certain uncertainty. So, if some students are taking experimental course, because currently this is a theoretical course, in experimental course they can have very good understanding of what does uncertainty mean. Even if we measure a particular quantity 2 or 3 times, there is always some small fluctuation, some errors, precision issue is there, accuracy issue is there. So, that I just wanted to highlight a little bit over here. Now, what is the physical significance of this Biot number? Essentially, it is a ratio of two quantities. As you can see, that I can write the h L by k in this form as well. I can take L down into the denominator. So, I can say that it is essentially something like this. So, what we are saying is, if the convection heat transfer at the surface of the system is very insignificant compared to the conduction within the body. So, let me write that term down over here. Then we have conduction within the body. This is conduction within the solid body, that is the denominator, and the numerator is convection at the surface, of solid. So, if Biot number value is very less, let us say Biot number is 0.01 or 0.001 or 0001, what this ratio tells me is that the number is so low because the denominator is very high, and the denominator says that the conduction within the body is very high, which means that the conduction resistance is almost 0 compared to the convection resistance. That is another way in which we can put it. I can keep on explaining it, but I think doing a numerical is much better to understand this particular concept. So, why don't we go ahead and do that numerical. So, we will take the same case that we have considered earlier, and then we will try to see it exactly now, that what we have done earlier qualitatively in this particular case over here, how do we get the exact values. So, let us use that particular approach. So, we will go to a new slide and define our problem statement as follows. So, it is the same problem in which we have a copper ball over here, and it is dipped into a fluid which is relatively cold to the copper ball. So, the fluid properties are known to us. It is always remaining at 20 degree centigrade. The convective heat transfer coefficient as soon as the copper ball is dropped is 100 watts per meter Kelvin. Initial condition for copper ball is that T initial is 80 degree centigrade. Its radius is known to us, R naught value is 1 centimeter. And now, let me write down the thermal properties of copper, which I have noted down from one of the tables. So, these are available in any standard textbook. So, thermal conductivity is approximately 400 watts per meter Kelvin. So, what I am writing over here are copper values. Thermal conductivity is 400. If you look at density, approximate value is 9000 kgs per meter cube. If you look at specific heat, it is about 400 joules per kg Kelvin. Okay. And what we want to do now is follow 3 steps. First of all, find out mathematically whether we can apply lumped system, lumped analysis, and we will write whether it can be applied, yes or no. Second, we will calculate the value of B. If you remember what was B, this was the time constant, and the units for B was 1 by second. And finally, what I want to find out is how much time it takes for the copper ball to reach a particular temperature. I will call it TF, a particular final temperature. In this particular case, I want to find out how much time it takes when the copper ball drops in this particular fluid. It will immediately start to cool. So, how many seconds it takes for it to go from 80 degrees centigrade to 40 degrees centigrade? This is what I want to find out. I could do it very quickly, but I wanted to follow this particular step so that engineers are well conversed in this particular formal method. So, for a simple method we can do it quickly, but when it becomes complicated, so let us do that particular thing. So, I may pose a question, how do I know whether lumped analysis can be applied, yes or no? So, the quick answer is we have to first calculate the value of Biot number, which value is HLC by K. So, all values are known to me. The only thing I will calculate is LC, which for the case of sphere, if we remember, it was R by 3. We do not have to even remember it, always just analyze it in this form, that this is the total volume of the body divided by its surface area. So, R by 3 over here turns out to be 1/3 of a centimeter, which is like 3.33 millimeters, right, and I can write it in decimal places like 0.0033 meters. Now, I can go and calculate Biot number from here. I will substitute the value of H. So, H value is 100, L value is very small 0.0033, K value is very large. So, it turns out over here Biot number is really small. We will have 3 zeros and 8 2. What unit should come after Biot number? So, please remember Biot number is non-dimensional, so there are no units after it. So, once we have figured out that the Biot number is such low, it was just supposed to be lower than 0.1, we can apply. If it is so low, we can definitely apply. So, we will say yes, we can apply the lumped analysis system over here. It is okay to do that. In the next step, let us go ahead and calculate the value of B. So, if you recall in the step number 2, B value from the previous expressions we can find out from here. I think we have defined B. B is given over here. This is the time constant, HAS divided by MCP. So, let us go and write it over here. It is HAS divided by MCP. So, there is some calculation involved over here, because surface area I can calculate based on 4 pi r square. So, this value I will be able to figure out. Then mass I can calculate based on the volume. So, density I know, the volume I can figure out is 4 by 3 pi r cube. So, these things I have already calculated before. I would request students to double check the calculation by mistake if I have made some human error. Let me go ahead and write those values over here. Let me find them where I have written. So, AS turns out to be 1.2, let me erase it, 1.256 into 10 power minus 3 meter square, and if you do the whole calculation, mass turns out to be about 37.7 gram. So, you can imagine it is just a 1 centimeter diameter copper ball. So, the mass is very less. So, I will write it in kgs over here like this, kgs. So, once I have my mass value, I have the AS value, H value and Cp are known from the problem statement itself. So, we can plug in all these numbers in and we can calculate the value of B. So, let us go ahead and do that. So, B value turns out to be, we need a calculator to do that, but I have done that calculation beforehand. It seems it is a very low value, and the units I can put now, because B actually has a unit. So, if something has a time constant which is having a very low value, but the units are inverse of time, it tells me actually it may take lot of time for this process to happen. So, we will figure it out in just a little while. So, that time actually we will calculate in step number 3. So, step 3 says from over here, let me calculate that particular time. So, I already have the governing equation from the previous slide. So, let us go back and look at 2 slides back. From here I know this particular equation. From here I will be able to figure out how much time it takes for the temperature to dip. So, the way I will write it is in this form over here. So, I will say temperature as a function of time is Ti minus T infinity e raised power minus Bt plus T infinity. From here I will be able to figure out what is the value of time by just doing some moving around certain terms, and it so happens it turns out to be minus 1 by B natural log T that we want it to achieve after a particular time, subtracted with T infinity divided by Ti minus T infinity. So, we can recheck whether there is any error in this thing or not. So, I can substitute all these values in. So, very quickly let me go ahead and do that. So, it is 00083, then there is a natural log. So, let us see what our numerator is going to be. So, what is this first term? Temperature at the given time, we want it to be 40 degrees, T infinity, T fluid temperature is 20 degree, initial temperature 80, and this one. So, if I have a calculator, I can calculate the natural log, do the subtraction mathematics over here, and if I can write that time value over here, it turns out to be 132.4 seconds. Let me see if I can, yeah, I will draw a circle on top of it. So, this is the final result that we were hoping for. It is a simple problem, we took little bit time explaining this. There is a reason behind that. We wanted to do it in a formal way. We wanted to first check formally whether lumped system can be applied in this case. Then we wanted to see what is the approximate value of B, how it turns out, because now all these values we have taken from actual life, right. So, we can now analyze that about 100 seconds it takes, because the temperature difference is not that large and H value is very small over here. That is the hint I am giving over here, because B itself is a function of H. Now, let us go back to that particular curve on I think slide number 2 over here. Yeah. So, now we got very good approximation. I had written 100 seconds. Now, let me cut it, and over here I will write that this is actually, okay, let me draw a new curve, because this one is not for 40 degrees. Okay, very quickly I will draw a new curve over here. So, what we mean by this particular time? This is this one, T initial is 80 degrees, then we have 40 over here, then this is 20, 40, 60 and 80. So, ambient temperature of that fluid is 20 degree, and we want to figure out after how much time. So, this exponential decay may go something like this. And what we have figured out over here is that after how much time, this is the point that we were looking at, right. So, I hope everybody is clear on this. This is a continuation of our solved example. So, we have figured out that a temperature drop from 80 degree to 40 degree, although the curve I have drawn qualitatively, but this number is accurate. So, we are getting about 132.4 seconds, because time is on the right hand side over here. Now, let us say another person comes and he asks, why can't we reduce this time by half? Can we do that? So, let us say 132 and we want to take half, it is about 66 seconds over here. So, I want to see how quickly it will reach over here. So, 66 seconds. Then I will draw another curve, because everything has to go exponential decay. So, if I wanted to draw over here, so qualitatively I figured out that I have gone from case 1 over here to case 2. Now, we will ask the question that what is actually increasing in this direction. So, if I pose that question to the students, now we can immediately tell by looking the answer over here, it is simply B. So, if I go back to the second slide over here, did I write? Yeah, this we have written H with a question mark, but actually it is the B. B is the time constant. So, if time constant is increasing, it is a very interesting phenomenon. If time constant is increasing because it is the inverse of second, then the time is actually decreasing. How it is decreasing? It is going from 132 to 66, isn't it become half? So, if something happens in half the time, then we are saying that the speed has actually increased. We can, so one way we can increase this b, and we can also check it that there is a direct correlation between t and b, right. So, in this over here, if I want to reduce t, this is a very beautiful expression. Over here, if I say if I want to reduce time by half, all I have to do is increase b by 2. By 2 means I have to make it twice. So, here if the b value was 0.0083, so I will write it over here. So, in this curve 1, b value is 0.0083 and the unit is second inverse, seconds inverse. So, in the second curve, the b value is known. So, this one I will call as b1, b2. We have figured it out 0.0. If I think you will get something like this, isn't it? And these are exact values. I am not taking approximate values over here. I can even reduce the time by another half. So, I want to do now in 33 seconds. I am getting impatient. I want to do everything fast. So, can engineer help me do that thing? I think the answer is yes. So, in that particular case, we will do a line over here. It should come and hit this particular spot. So, then the exponential decay will be like this. Sorry, it should not go down. In this particular case, I will say this is value b3 and this is simply twice of b2. So, now I can do math over here. Let us say it will turn out to be 0.332 second inverse. So, please, because I am doing it in memory, verbally I am doing the doubling. Please, I will request students, do it yourself, use a calculator and try and see whether we get it. But one thing I am sure is, if we keep on increasing the value of b, then the amount of time it takes will substantially reduce. So, I think with this we will stop here for today's lecture. Let us, before we conclude, we will take a brief recap of what we have actually done today in order to summarize it nicely. So, we started a new topic today. We looked at transient conduction and we started it off immediately with looking at two cases of walls, and I called it case A and case B, if you remember seeing it over here. And we are now directly looking at case B because this is the slightly easier version, and I will explain in next class that solving case A is slightly difficult. You need advanced methods in order to solve it. So, for solving B, we have learned this particular concept called the lumped analysis. So, we started looking at lumped analysis in detail and we did a very thorough energy balance, and here we are doing energy balance with time. So, we are looking at time interval, how much heat is actually being lost, and by equating that we got this equation over here. This is a differential equation, we solved it and finally got the solution of temperature as a function of time over here on the middle right hand side. Then we did a formal declaration for the criteria for lumped analysis, and we took the help of this parameter defined by Biot. So, this is known as the Biot number, and we figured out if Biot number is much less than 0.1, then we can immediately apply the lumped analysis over here without any loss of accuracy. And finally, we concluded with a real life solved example where we took values from real life and then we figured out that how much time it takes under certain conditions of H and B, that temperature goes from a high value to a low value. With that, let me conclude this particular lecture. Thank you very much.